Okay, so everyone, welcome again. If you've just joined us, please feel free to share in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm Lisa Plain, layoff coach and founder of Career Balance Coaching and creator of the Layoff to Legacy program. Tonight, we're diving into the topic of reinvention, what it means, how to go through it, and some tips on making it easier. I'm thrilled to introduce our incredible panel of experts joining me for the fireside chat. Each of these professionals brings a unique perspective on what it means to rebuild, redefine, and reimagine your life after a major change. And they are all experts from the Layoff to Legacy program. So first, we have Kristina Virro, a registered psychotherapist and founder of 𝗖ście, a mental health and wellness clinic offering psychotherapy and nutritional counseling. Kristina is passionate about having real, no-nonsense conversations about mental health and helping people feel more empowered in their lives. She's been featured on CP24, Global News, and Elle Canada, and is also the author of The Anxious Teen. Her ability to make mental health approachable and practical has earned her nearly 100,000 followers on TikTok. Congratulations. Next, Jessica Fraser is a life and transition coach and the creator of Your Inner Vitality. Jessica helps people navigate self-doubt and turn personal challenges into breakthroughs. Your one-on-one coaching, group workshops, and her guided journal, Courage to Change, she empowers people to align their goals with their deepest values and create a life of purpose and fulfillment. Joining us as well is David Cohen, business coach, educator, and founder of Your Big Venture. David has taught and coached thousands of entrepreneurs to build thriving businesses and uncover their unique value. His programs help people gain clarity on their strengths, define their markets, and create sales and marketing strategies that drive results. He's worked with organizations such as the City of Toronto, Alterna Savings, and Youth Employment Services, and continues to inspire new entrepreneurs through his book, Live Life Swift. And finally, Julie Murrell is a certified image strategist and style expert who's helped over 150 career-focused women worldwide refine their personal style to match their ambitions. Through her signature program, the Style System, Julie teaches professionals how to use style as a tool for confidence, credibility, and career growth. She believes that how we present ourselves is one of the most underutilized ways to express who we are and where we're going. Together, this incredible panel brings a powerful blend of mindset, strategy, business, and self-expression, everything that you're going to need to navigate reinvention with confidence and authenticity. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here with me today. We are going to dive right into the questions, and we're talking about layoffs today. So a layoff involves loss, not just of the situation, but also how you saw yourself within it. I'll ask you first, Kristina, what emotions tend to come up when people are forced to let go of a familiar identity or career?
I think a big one is grief. Like you said, you mentioned the word loss. And for me, there's a particular type of grief that can come up with these. So, one word is disenfranchised grief, which I'm not sure if folks have heard of that. But basically, disenfranchised grief is grief that occurs when you've experienced something that society doesn't really recognize, that other people might not really validate, even. And so there's not really any rituals around what mourning looks like, or you just might feel like you might not even label it as grief at all. And so that can also lead to a lot of isolation in addition to everything that you're experiencing. So I think one part of it is the disenfranchised grief for sure. And also shame, especially for those of us who have been very career oriented, very career driven, where our job was a really big part of our identity. And then all of a sudden, this huge piece of what we spend our days doing is gone. And a lot of the folks that I've worked with can really go to a place of, I'm a failure, or, I'm stupid, or whatever it happens to be. So there's the grief, there's the shame, and then also just distress, right? Because now you're in this new world where you went from having structure, stability, consistency to none of that at all. And you put those three things together, and that can be a really overwhelming experience. So I'm so glad that we're talking about it today and creating a sense of community around it, because I also think it can be really traumatizing, if I look at how I define trauma, it's something that really shatters our sense of self and our belief systems about ourselves, other people in the world around us. And an unexpected layoff, especially, can actually affect your beliefs around those things. And they've done some research about how that can lead to a trust scar, even if you control for other variables, like you've actually had no trust issues before and you've had other factors that are in your favor. Once you've had an unexpected layoff in particular, it can lead to this trust scar that can be really difficult to recover from. So, hope that wasn't too long-winded, but I think that those are
No,
some really common emotions that I've seen people experience.
absolutely. And I think it's so important because grief in general these days is not talked about in community as much as it should be, whether it is, the typical grief that we think about or just grief that we experience through things like a layoff. So I think it is so important for us to bring it up in situations like this. And that is really interesting too about the research that was done there. Jess, do you have anything to add here around the emotions that people might experience after a layoff?
Yeah, and I think the other part with the grieving process with this is oftentimes with layoff, you don't get the answers as to why. So you don't get the closure that you would typically get if you were leaving a company on your own accord. And with that can come a lot of processing too, right? Because oftentimes, especially when it's not on your own means of doing, you start to question why, right? And many of us who deal with people who are in career transition, they don't have the luxury of learning how or what that is and why that is. So having to also have that as another added layer can also make it really tricky too, because you're trying to find ways to let go and move on, but you're still understanding like, what did I do wrong? And that's what I see a lot of times with my clients. Like, what did I do wrong? Why me and nobody else? And so, um, getting past that is a part of the grieving process, but you have to allow yourself to process through that, but also find acceptance that you're not going to find those answers and being able to now find that new direction to go forward.
Absolutely. And really processing and resetting after a layoff, going back to both what you said, Jess and Kristina, these things can carry forward without us even realizing a lot of times. So the trust might come up when we're in an interview process. We might start to question something that somebody said. So it is really important to process it and deal with it up front so that you can move through it without having this kind of weight on your shoulders.
And could I
So
add something on that,
yeah,
Lisa?
of course.
Sorry. And the reason I think it's important to really process that is oftentimes I get with my clients saying, when it comes up in an interview that I'm no longer working, how do I answer that? And so if you are like, that's already a nerve-wracking question as it is. But if you haven't allowed yourself to really process through that and understand the logics that this is just a restructural from the company, that can show up in your interview and how you answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Now, once the noise of the old routine fades, because that often happens, you've been in this chaotic, busy working world. Reinvention often asks, what matters to me now? Who am I now? And what matters to me? So you're stripping away what was expected of you and you're starting to reconnect with what's authentic. David, I'll start with you. How can people reconnect with who they are beyond their work? Oh, you're on mute.
I think you've got to do a little bit of inner work and, really begin to sort of, yes, take responsibility for what happened in a job loss, but on the other side of the coin is don't let it like stymie you, like we're big, beautiful souls with like lots of potential. I'm going to just share, what happened to me years ago when I lost a job. And, I went through the stages of grief, like disbelief, anger, despondency. I think it was the Leafs were in the playoffs at that time of year, and it was maybe I don't drink beer, but you can imagine me watching hockey on the couch with a beer. But what happened was a good colleague of mine had a weekend retreat where it was called Create Your Vision. And so I shifted out of the despondency and the emotional aspect of job loss and created a vision. And the vision was to start a radio show for small business, which happened. open up my own business coaching training practice, which happened. And it happened. So I got let go on April 19th. By August 17th, I had a training contract and coaching contract, and the radio show aired for the first time on Saturday, August 17th, and went for 7 years after. So I think, like, get back on the horse, you know, and create something new, something that's passionate, because yes, it's loss, but it's also an opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what is it about that vision that allowed you to kind of step outside of the box, do you think?
I declared it to everybody in the workshop. So it was like, oh, you know, my reputation is on the line. And I really wanted to do it, you know, it was just what I wanted to create. And so really, this is a chance to really do what you love. Maybe it's going to Bangkok, you know, and from Calgary and starting a new life and a career there. Maybe it's just, you know, doing something that's in your heart to do. And you know, there's, what's that old quote? You know, the universe is conspiring with you, not against you. So, you know, you got to kind of believe in that and really trust it'll all work out. And don't, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. You look at what's going on around us. We're going through a period of massive instability and change, and job loss is a huge part of it of late, you know? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Jess, I'd love to hear your take on this too. How do you help your clients reconnect with who they are beyond work?
This, though you may not necessarily see it at the time, this is a beautiful opportunity to practice your autonomy. And what I mean by that is, and I totally acknowledge that being home, you may also have your home responsibilities and family and lifestyle responsibilities, but this is an opportunity to recreate, kind of what David had said, you know, and I say that because we get so stuck in the autopilot of what our job was before, and so stuck with the identity that's connected with it, that we forget that when we stand alone, there's a lot of beautiful things that we enjoy in life, that we have, that we add to in life for people as well. And so this is a really great opportunity to tap back into those things. So that's the other part with, you know, if we're thinking intentionally for finding your next landing space, whether that is owning your own business and building a career with David, or whether that is finding the next great career, the other part that you want to think with this is the networking. Intentionally getting back out there and talking with people is a really great thing to help you find the next spot. So it's twofold in the sense, if you want to be intentional with your career search, networking is a great opportunity. And networking could mean having coffee with a friend you haven't been able to have in a long time because life got in the way. It could also be about reaching out to somebody completely new and braving, having like an informational interview because you love what they do or you love the company that they work for and you want to learn more. Then the second fold to this is reconnecting with your passions, and whether that is like coloring again or crafts or going out and, you know, exercising regularly, getting in those nature walks, whatever it is that stimulates your soul, make sure you're putting more of that into your world right now, because you technically have more autonomy to be able to make some of those things work, even if it's just for short periods of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to just validate Andreas' comment here. The scary part is that so many others are being laid off. And there's a lot of media around this lately, and the stats, I mean, in Canada here, the unemployment rate is 7.1. Back in the 2008 recession, the unemployment rate was 18%. So it feels really scary, but we're not there yet. Andrea, sorry, no problem. We're not there yet. So there is a lot of doom and gloom, but we also need to focus on the jobs that are there. The job boards are not empty. We need to just kind of keep looking forward and figuring out what's going to be the best fit for you. So I just wanted to address that before we move on. So the next topic that we're going to talk about is self-compassion. It's so easy to cocoon or go inward, particularly at the beginning of a reinvention. If you think of a butterfly, they go in, they kind of dissolve, and then they come back as something incredible. But it can bring up a lot of shame, guilt that you should be doing more, you should be doing something differently. What role do you see self-compassion playing during rediscovery or reinvention? And what are some ways that people can practice self-compassion? And I'll start with you, Julie.
Such a great question, because I've totally been there myself. And I would say the word that comes to mind is surrendering to what you're experiencing. I think one of the most, for me, when I've been in these moments, one of the things that makes it really difficult is resisting what is happening. Because when you're in that place of resistance, it's impossible to pivot and take the next move because you're focused on what you don't want. And so pivoting to surrender, I think opens you up to a world of possibility and allowing what is to be. And then when you do that, I think it creates an opening for you to start doing this reinvention process and figuring out not so much like shifting your focus from why did this happen to me to taking responsibility and your power back to like what do I want to create for myself, um, and just understanding that certain things are in your control and certain things are not, and that it is shifting from self-blame, like Kristina was talking about, to what is in my control that I want to create for myself now.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Kristina, how about you? How can people use self-compassion during this time?
Yeah, so a lot of the work around self-compassion is done by this amazing researcher. Her name is Dr. Kristin Neff, if anybody wants to look up her work. She actually has a really good book called Self-Compassion. But she talks about how there's a three-step kind of practice you can do with yourself, and I recommend it to a lot of the patients that I work with. And so I can just walk you through it quickly because I find it really helpful. But so the first step is sort of what Julie was saying is you practice mindfulness around your experience, which is when you just accurately name what's happening without judging. So instead of that resistance, like she was mentioning, you just say, okay, I'm having a moment of shame, or I'm having a moment of self-criticism or whatever. So you just name it exactly as it is. The second component of her practice is what she calls common humanity, which is that when we are not being compassionate with ourselves, we really can go to this place of kind of self-pity sometimes, and also just criticism as well, which is like, I'm the only person on the planet who's experiencing this problem and I am therefore bad. So common humanity is remembering actually anybody in this position would really, really be struggling, and there are other people who are in this position. So it kind of takes you out of your cocoon and remembers like, oh yes, we are in this together to a degree, and I can remember that togetherness. And then the third step is what she calls self-kindness. So a good way into this is to say, would I ever talk to anybody else in the way that I'm talking to myself right now? So if we were to put that into practice, it might say, okay, right now I'm experiencing an emotion of shame. The second piece is, okay, there's other people who have been laid off right now, and I can imagine that that's really hard for all of us. That's the common humanity piece. And then the self-kindness piece can be, okay, what would I say to a friend? You know, that sounds really, really hard. And what I like to do with a lot of folks I work with is, what's an action you can do to demonstrate kindness to yourself right now? So I like to take it just out of your head and say, okay, well, it can be really simple. Like, I'm going to go make myself a nice little snack. It could just be that, you know? Or it could be, I'm going to go sit down and apply to that job that I've been avoiding. Or it could be, I'm going to just go for a walk and get some fresh air. But as long as it's something that puts you into a space of what's something good and kind to do right now, rather than just stewing in this. So I really like that little practice. I use it myself all the time. So I hope that helps.
Definitely. And I think that that's a really easy thing that people can do. It's just like if you had a sick family member or friend sitting on the couch, what might you do for them that you can then do for yourself to an act of kindness? I love that. Okay, so another thing that comes up during this time is limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs being inner critic, imposter syndrome. And what I find is that these limiting beliefs tend to stall our ability to look outside of the box, which is one of the hardest things to do when you're in reinvention. So what fears or limiting beliefs tend to come up when people are going through this? And I'll start with you, Jess.
That they're not good enough, they're not worthy. Um, I also think that when I'm thinking of this question, it's also like that fear of whether they can find another job again. Can they get something that's different? And for example, I'm just gonna echo what Andrea said in the comments here about, like there's a lot of layoffs happening and not very many opportunities happening. So the other part that I witness with this with my clients is that it's a snowball effect no matter which way you go. So if you start to, have these limited beliefs in place and being like, there's not great opportunities. We're coming into the holiday season right now, and hiring is starting to be slow. You know, you're feeding that space of scarcity for you. So you have to also be super cognizant of like, and I can't, Kristina, like I love the things that you were just saying there earlier about that whole self-compassion and um there's another element to that too, where you want to, I encourage you to also sit there and ask, like, is this the only truth to this, to my moment here and now? And if you sit with that long enough, I guarantee that you can find other truths there. And it could be that you are scared, and that is the root of any of these limited beliefs right now is fear, right? Like your security has just been taken from you and now you are in a space of unknown. And you may be responsible for other people and other things in your life that are now you're thinking, like, how am I going to be able to show up? And so I would want to turn that around for anybody on this call right now that is feeling any of those limited beliefs and that scarcity and that fear of like, what is the truth here? And just keep going into that. And I would also say, I am an avid journaler, obviously, but like journal that question, doodle that question, like mind map that question out, get it out onto paper cognizantly. As soon as you're doing that, you're getting the frontal cortex going, which is also your logical thinking in your brain. So if you can get that moving and get that going, you will find more and more truths to the limited beliefs that are showing up for you.
Thank you so much. That's so true. And journaling has such a special place in my heart too. It's funny because it mixes the logical and the emotional, and it all kind of comes together to help you sort through your ideas.
Yeah. Think outside the box. When you're talking about getting outside the box, just think outside the box with your journaling too. Have fun with it.
Yeah. And Kristina, I know that a lot of your clients, you talk with them about imposter syndrome, inner critic. And a lot of people say, how can I overcome the inner critic? So what advice do you have for people who are in that space?
Yeah, sometimes I'll actually, this might sound strange, but there's even in the wording of that question, it's like, how do I get rid of this inner critic and how do I just, get that out of me? And I find that the moment that we do this, it's like we're in a tug of war with ourselves that feels really horrible. And so, what I'll sometimes do is spend some time with people saying, okay, so let's talk to that inner critic within you and let's explore what it's feeling. And I'm not saying we all have split personality disorder or anything like that, but it's like we have these parts of ourselves that have different belief systems that have developed and different fears, like Jess was saying, right? And usually the critic even actually has some really positive intentions and some fears that are very, very valid, right? So we might say, well, what is that inner critic saying? They'll say, well, I'm really worried that I'm going to be blindsided again. And having a conversation of, well, does that make sense to you based on what you've experienced? There can be see a real softening towards ourselves. And again, just sort of a window and pathway into self-compassion because of that softening. And so then people can just sort of shift from saying, okay, maybe I don't need to get rid of this part of myself. Maybe this part of myself isn't horrible. Maybe it's something that makes sense. And can I actually use its intention for better? So its intention is to maybe motivate me, right? Most of the time people are like, well, if my inner critic isn't around, then I'm going to be lying on the couch all day binging Love is Blind. And it's like, well, maybe that's not true, right? But can we just actually name that and channel that into some behavioral actions then? Okay, if that's the fear, then what is a plan you want to come up this week to make sure that you're not, lacking structure, but you're also honoring the commitments that you do have and the goals that you have set. So I think the paradoxical answer is I don't really want to get rid of any part of anybody. I want to understand it and integrate it and honor it in a way, if that makes sense. I think it's a much kinder way to live with ourselves.
Absolutely. And when we can integrate it, then it doesn't become the enemy anymore. It's something that we can then work with and figure out, like you said, systems. I think that systems are so important. And there are times too where people, especially after a layoff, are like, am I going to have to take a pay cut? How am I going to get a promotion now that I've been laid off? And I think that the imposter syndrome is like, okay, well, what if somebody figures out that I have been laid off and I've been hired as, in a promotion role? Somebody's going to find out that I'm not as good as they think that I am. And so it is important to address that and integrate it. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Of
I
course.
have a name for one of my inner critics. Actually, Debbie Ford, the late Debbie Ford, wrote a book about the fact that we have 12 different personalities inside us, right? And my inner critic is it's Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons. And so Krusty is the guy on the couch drinking beer with a bad comb over, a t-shirt, and boxer shorts. So we're getting an image, it's not pretty. And so what are you applying for a job for? You're not going to get it, right? So that's Krusty. Thank you, Krusty. I really appreciate your view. And I'm going to, make my next call to a potential employer. So I find naming it and dialoguing with Krusty is actually pretty entertaining. And he's just trying to protect me from getting hurt and, disappointed, right? So
I love that.
yeah, that's his role. And and he's tried to keep me from making prospecting calls for my business. So it's like, Krusty, dude.
That's how David and I met.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I put him in his place that day.
good. Okay. Amazing. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Now we're going to talk a little bit about courage. Reinvention requires courage. You're rebuilding your self-trust. You're learning to back yourself again after a setback. Funny thing is, confidence doesn't come first. It grows as you take action. So what are a few ways that people can show up with confidence before they fully feel ready? And I'm going to start with you, Julie.
Love that. So from a image perspective, when we're talking about our inner and outer selves, it's a two-way street where you can either already feel confident on the inside and then present that outwardly. But if you don't feel confident on the inside, you can embody that externally, and then that translates to how you feel. There's actually evidence that your appearance it has like a bidirectional relationship with your internal self-image. And so a big thing that I talk about with clients is presenting yourself in a way that makes you feel aligned with who you are, that makes you feel confident in how you're showing up and appropriate for whatever the situation is. And also when you take the time to curate your appearance, it's also a vote towards a positive self-image, that you are taking the time to look at yourself and to take care of yourself and to think about who you are and what you want to communicate externally through your appearance. And so I would argue that you can embody that confidence externally and let that, I don't know, be internalized, I guess, when you are presenting yourself in a way that makes you feel good.
I love that. And, you know, there's a saying, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. Does that apply in this situation too? Like, are you putting on your full suit to do phone interviews, or, you know, what are some ways that people might be able to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that idea of dressing for the job you want is interesting these days with the workplaces evolving and becoming extremely casual. And, you know, we don't have to wear those like traditional power outfits like a suit or even a blazer these days. But I would say it's really about connecting with what actually makes you feel good and recognizing that okay, you might feel good in your comfortable sweats because they're comfortable and you can lounge and they're not digging into you or anything. But there's a difference between that kind of comfort where you can lounge and the kind of comfort that you're wearing something that actually lifts you up. There's research surrounding this that points to this concept of embodied or enclothed cognition. And essentially, the idea is that we create associations with the clothing that we wear. The study itself was having participants wear this white coat, and some people were told that it was a doctor's coat, and some people were told that it's a painter's coat, and they were assigned some kind of focus task. And the results showed that the people that were told that the coat they were wearing was a doctor's coat actually performed the task with more accuracy than the ones that were told it was a painter's coat. So what they're concluding from this is that you embody the traits or the characteristics that you associate with the clothing that you're wearing. And so how that translates to, you know, clothing and feeling confident, it's not necessarily wearing these power clothing, but the clothing that you have positive association with that is going to make you feel empowered or aligned with yourself or confident in who you are and what you bring to the table. And I think with that, it's interesting to think about your standards in alignment with that, because I think when it comes to layoff, a lot of us have accountability from our jobs to step up. Like you can't just show up to the office wearing whatever you want and your hair in a mess. Like we have that accountability. So with layoff, you're coming into a space where you are being accountable to yourself for how you show up. And it might require you to reevaluate your standards for how you show up for yourself when you don't have anything external requiring you to present yourself a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's so important. And something that I've learned from you as well is you can rearrange your wardrobe and wear pieces that you already have. So this doesn't mean you have to go out and buy things that are going to make you feel confident. You can find ways of putting your clothes together that can still give you that same effect, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I actually just did this like mini study looking at what good style is. And one of the things that came up from that, I gathered insights from 10 professionals across the fashion industry in different realms and got their perspectives. And one of the questions was, is good style more about the clothing items that you're wearing or how you wear them? And 100% of the responses were that it was either 50-50, the clothes that you have and how you wear them, but significantly skewed. I think it was 70% of the responses were that it's actually more about how you wear the clothes. So no, it's not about going out and buying a bunch of new things. It's ideally about having a collection of pieces that are that suit you and that serve your external expression, and fit is a really big part of that. So making sure you have pieces that actually fit you well so that when you wear them you feel good in them.
That makes sense. And that could be tailoring things that you already have, or,
Yeah.
finding things that are new.
And
Amazing.
styling, the way you style too. Yeah.
I love that. Amazing. Okay. So for people who are pivoting or are going to start something new, what small steps can help rebuild confidence? And I'll start with you, Jess.
Hmm. I do think that a routine is a really important thing. Creating, redefining a routine for yourself is a really important element. Um, I'd also say, okay, Lisa, can you say the question one more time for me? I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah,
addressing it properly.
of course. So for people who are pivoting or starting something new, what
Yeah.
small steps can help them to rebuild their confidence?
Yeah. Okay. So the routine is a big one. And I'd say, too, another thing, when you're introducing something into this new routine or in your life right now, it isn't so much about taking things out as it is about putting something in that is going to be beneficial for you. Um, you can always look at removing things down the road, but one of the things it's a lot harder in the space of coming back, like pulling things out. So putting something into the routine, and I'll give you an example. And these are routines, like think of things that are going to, we've been talking about a whole bunch of things when it comes to self-compassion and all of this stuff is like, how are you taking care of yourself in small ways that are going to add up and support the next pivot that you're going to do? And I say that in the kindest ways of like, if you love reading, I love reading. I'm an absolute reading geek. I'll get up first thing in the morning, and that's the first thing I do before I get out of bed. It may only be a paragraph, it may be a page, it may be 10 pages, depending on how much my time is. You can do something for 5 minutes, and it could be enough to fill that cup up for the day. So, I do believe routines are super important for you, but also finding things that are going to be grounding and nourishing for you to help support that new pivot that you're doing.
Love that. Thank you. And David, I want to ask you just kind of because all of these things, as Jess said, these are all foundational pieces, right? You need to build this foundation before you can go and reinvent yourself. So now that you're sort of moving into something new, how can people start to think outside of the box? Let's say they want to start a business. Let's say the business has been on their mind. What are some things that they can do to start thinking outside of the box?
Definitely, network, have a learning mindset. There's so much available on YouTube. Um, go to, tap in, have those information interviews. If you're looking to shift out of one career and into another, tap into that new, that new area that you want to be in, and maybe meet somebody. Hey, what's it really like? Talk to me, or perhaps even join trade associations. That's a great place to network and also learn about something new that you want to get into. So I think having that sort of learning mindset, doing your homework, finding out what it's like, having information interviews, networking, like I'm not saying join, but maybe go as a guest to a BNI event. I know a lot of people find benefit from that because it's a referral network. You get referrals for positions. Just to also talk about the confidence that you need. 𝗖𝗎 𝗶𝘁𝗵 wrote a book on the power pose, like Wonder Woman, how they're like this. And so if you're feeling low confidence, like, well, I want to start a business, but I just got laid off, I'm not doing much, I'm just beginning. Just do the power pose, tap into Tony Robbins, where he talks a lot about change your physiology, you change your psychology. You watch Tony Robbins and he's going, yeah, like do that in the morning if you have to, have those kind of routines going. And yeah, just believe in yourself. The other thing I think is really important, take time to do an inventory on all your successes in your life, like for the past 3 months, the past 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. And you'll be amazed at how much you've actually accomplished and done. So,
Yeah, that's so true. I have a similar activity that I run clients through, which is really looking at the things that you've enjoyed in your work. So just because you don't want to go back to the same job that you were doing, and this was something that I went through myself when I kind of reinvented myself. Back when I was in university, I was working at a winery, and I really enjoyed doing um, wine tastings and tours, which sounds like totally left field, but I loved talking to people and I loved hearing people's stories and I loved connecting with people in that way. So I was like, how can I, in my next job, find something that allows me to connect with people, understand their stories? And so that was a piece of it. There were a lot of pieces, and I call them breadcrumbs. But if you can tap into what your breadcrumbs are through your career and start to notice some themes, that's a really great way of starting to think, like, what else is out there that would give me this thing that made me feel really full? Yeah, Jess.
That
yeah.
reminded me of an activity too that if you guys would like to try it, is my clients really love this activity. So, when an employer will ask you, can you tell me about your top 3 strengths? Or like, what is it that your strengths are? And sometimes that can really gum people up. Or in a time right now when you're in that transition where you'd be like, I don't know what's good anymore. Like I thought I was doing good, but it's not good apparently. Like now I'm laid off, whatever your limited beliefs are showing to you. But is think of those people in your life that you really trust, love, and care. And if you can go and reach out to 3 of those people and ask them, can you please take some time to think about what is my superpower? Like David's talking about the power pose, like what is my superpower? And have them share that with you, whether it's via email or whether it's having a coffee date and listening to this. And the beautiful thing is not just like they're not going to tell you just what it is, they're going to go into detail and let you know the reason why. And why I say that's so important is we normalize our superpowers. So this could be a really great time for you to hear what other people see and experience in you. So then you can even be applying that or remembering, hey, I do this at work all the time. I've done this here. I've done this here. Great. Now you can actually go into the interview and say, people have actually told me that this is one of my strengths because of da, 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 da. And here's an example from work. So it could get the juices flowing for you. And hopefully that's an activity that you may find worthwhile.
Love that. I did that myself a while back, and I was surprised. I was very pleasantly surprised at what people had said. And it's absolutely a blind spot. You're right, because it's something that's come so naturally for people. Okay, so now, you've gone through the reinvention, you've figured out what you want to do, you're showing up differently in how you speak about yourself, how you present yourself, the choices that you make, you're starting to see a path forward. This is often when others start to notice the change too. So what are some outward signs that someone is sort of stepping into alignment or going down the path that feels most true for them? And I'll start with you, Kristina.
I was just thinking about professional and personal experiences, and one thing that came to my mind was perhaps less of a desire to prove yourself to other people. There's kind of this quiet being a little bit more sure of your decisions. So, I mean, I remember when I first started my practice, I got a lot of people saying that they thought it was a bad idea. And I really knew I wanted to do it and could do it. And so it just doesn't really affect you as much. It's like the water off a duck's back, but it's that embodied feeling of, okay, if you don't think, and I wasn't defensive. I was just like, oh, that's a really interesting perspective. Okay. And then even when I was able to, build the practice, it wasn't like I was vengeful about it or anything. It was just like, oh no, this was something that really aligned with me. And so it's kind of, sureness maybe is how I would word it, is something I've noticed. So that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. How about you, Julie?
External signs that you're in alignment. I would say you start to do things differently. You start to stand out a little bit because you're not making the same decisions that we're conditioned to make, or that you've always done because it's what everybody else around you is doing. And you're connected with who you are and what really makes you happy. And it's coming from the inside. It's not because of external suggestions, but it's, that inner knowing, which I think is related to what Kristina is saying about that self-assuredness. Like, you are doing it for your own reasons. And I think style ties into that, where once you are really connected with who you are and you know how you want to show up and you've evolved how you see yourself, you are also going to start dressing in that way, in a way that is aligned with who you are on the inside. Something I teach with my clients is embodying your values. And what's interesting is that when we start talking about this, a lot of times clients haven't really thought about what their values are, and they especially haven't thought about how it translates to their appearance and how they're presenting themselves. So, for example, one thing that I have seen come up is a value for creativity. When given the space and given the opportunity to really think about what makes them stand out, we also do an exercise where you reach out to people in your inner circle to kind of hold a mirror back of what they think your strengths are. Creativity comes up. And this might come up for a woman who always dresses in black, wearing the same thing more or less every day, like a uniform. And so we look at how creativity can actually be embodied through your style, whether that's your use of color or your use of texture or your use of different silhouettes and cuts that you might have never even thought of. And so you can also, it shows evidence in how you dress yourself from a place of intention, not because of external influences and ideas around how you should look.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, it then starts to show up in, let's say, interviews, because the clothes that you're putting on your body for the interview feel different. You're answering questions differently because you are feeling more assured, as Kristina said. And I think that that's really the goal through all of this is, obviously the goal is to get another job, some kind of job, whether that's starting your own business or getting a job. So through all of these things that you're doing, you're trying to come back to yourself. And I think that a lot of people lose themselves through work over time, because it's, you take the next promotion, somebody connects with you and asks if you are interested in this role, seems interesting, you say yes, but you don't spend a lot of time thinking about what it is that you want. So through this process, coming back to your values, coming back to who you are, getting to know yourself again, it really does change the trajectory of your life and your career as you go forward. And it's not that you're not going to change again, because you continually change, but at least then you know how to approach it, and you can reset when you need to. So this has been an incredible discussion, and I'm very mindful of our time. So it's 8:21. I'd love to just get some final advice from everybody who is going through this life moment that they're in. And I'll just start with you, Jess. Do you have any final advice for people who are navigating a layoff?
This too is temporary. So it is just a season in your life. And you're going to learn that you're a lot stronger and tougher and more resilient than you think you are. Just keep going at it.
Thank you. Kristina?
I would say that it's interesting how the puzzles pieces eventually come together in ways that you never would have anticipated or expected. And like a very short story with this is that my personal connection with this is that I entered the world of journalism at a horrible time to be a journalist, when it was just tanking as an industry. And I remember when I had to change careers, I was like, what a waste of time. Like that I spent so much money on a master's degree, spent time, like what a waste. And now I'm in my practice and I'm really good at research. I'm really good at interviewing, and which really translates well into therapy. And so there's this skill transference and this pool of personal resources and strengths that you're developing in these strange ways that will come together one day, that you'll be like, hey, well, maybe that thing that I learned from that job or from that layoff or from that person at that job, you just never know how it's going to fit. And I know when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to see that. But as somebody who's been through the other side and witnessed so many people on the other side, just trust the process and what's going to come from it.
Love that. Thank you. David?
Go for little wins. So get that part-time job, just to, or do something where you're winning. You're winning at something every day, and that builds your confidence, right? And understand that nothing's, like as Jess said, nothing's forever. This too shall pass. And so if you've got like a little part-time gig where you're pulling in some income and you're feeling good, you don't know who you're going to meet, right? Maybe there's a customer that really likes your style, and he wants to hire you away from that part-time job, so I think, go after those little victories, those little moral victories, and really surround yourself with good people. I'm really big on having an accountability buddy, and also I'm really big on a mastermind team. Form a mastermind team with other peers so you can come in, discuss your wins, your challenges, and brainstorm around those challenges. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And volunteering is another good one too,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking for some wins.
Yeah, no kidding. I remember volunteering at the Kids Health Phone in a promotional marketing way. And then I was in a different field, and who do I meet but the marketing people at, Nestle and Bell and all dairies, and it's like, oh man, I'm meeting these top people just by volunteering. Now, from promoting and trying to sell my business stuff to them, that would be a bit more challenging, but here they were, and yeah, it was great.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Julie?
Yeah, I love this question. Piece of advice. I'm thinking back to my own personal experiences of having to shed a version of myself and exist in this, it feels like a void. And the biggest lesson I took that I would pass on is to allow yourself to exist in possibility, because this is an opening that I like to see it as an opening that doesn't present itself unless we're literally forced into it. And that when you see it as this space of possibility, and you have, processed what you need to process to be able to follow your inspiration, I think that's when the breadcrumbs or those sparks that are meant for us start to show up and lead us to that next chapter.
Love that. Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you so much to our panel tonight for your time, your vulnerability, your insights. I feel the energy from this conversation, and I hope that everybody's feeling inspired from our discussion. There is so much shared, and if you're interested in rewatching it, I am going to be sending out the recording tomorrow. You've just spent the last little while exploring what reinvention really means, not just landing your next job, but rediscovering yourself really after a layoff. This isn't just about your resume or your next role. It's about rebuilding that confidence and that clarity and trust in yourself so that what you do next actually fits who you are now. And that's really what we do inside the Layoff to Legacy program. It's a step-by-step process designed to specifically help professionals who have built great careers and they're ready for something that feels more meaningful, more balanced, and more aligned. Inside the program, there are 5 stages. So you go through the reset, which is really rebuilding your foundation, your wellness, your mindset, and your self-belief, redefining what success means to you and what your next role will be, refocusing your documents, your personal brand, so that when you're out in the world, you're sharing the messages that you want to send. You're re-engaging with your network with confidence and clarity, and then you're also re-entering the market with purpose. So you don't have to figure this out alone. Community is such a big part of this. Community, sharing your grief, sharing your wins, finding that accountability that you really want, as well as having some incredible experts, including these 4 here tonight. So they will be hosting masterclasses within the program on various topics, which I think is just incredible. So if you're ready to take that next step and this resonated with you, I'd love to invite you to join the program. As a thank you for being here tonight, I've created an essential layoff checklist to help you navigate these foundational pieces after a layoff. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and in this link, you'll also find a scorecard that you can complete, the program brochure, as well as a link to book a consultation if you'd like to learn a bit more and see if you'd be a fit. So I'm going to put that into the link into the chat now. I'm also going to put the LinkedIn profiles for all of our experts here so that you can follow along with them, learn more from them, and just continue this journey in whatever way fits for you.